I call the meeting of the Urbana Historic Preservation Commission to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Mr. Dossett? Here. Ms. Novak?
Here.
Ms. Peluso?
Here.
Mr. Seiler? Here. Mr. Shepard is excused. Ms. Smith? Here. Ms. Stoltz?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. We have no changes to the agenda, so the next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, November 11th. Are there any additions or corrections to that? I have one small picky correction on page 4. Under the staff report and the award, it should be Urbana's Historic Preservation Commission, not Landmark. Drop Landmark.
Can I make a motion to approve?
Second. It's been moved by Scott, seconded by Kim Smith, that we approve the minutes as corrected. Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved as corrected. Written communications, we have one piece that we'll acknowledge in the public hearing. Is that all we have? Next item is audience participation. If you would like to speak about something related to historic preservation that doesn't relate to the case that we have coming up on the agenda, you may do so at this time. Otherwise, we ask if you're talking about the case that you hold your commentary for the public hearing in a few minutes. Does anybody wish to speak during this time in the meeting? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, we have no continued public hearings and no old business, so the next item is case number HP 2012-L-01, which I hereby open. An application to designate 801 West Indiana Avenue as a local landmark. TJ and Louise Cooney, applicants. We have a regimented order for this from members of the audience for public hearings. First off, Rebecca Bird will do the staff report. We'll then ask the form preparer, the applicant, to speak if you wish. And then we go with proponents and opponents prior to the commission discussion. If at any time anybody has any questions, please raise your hand and let me know. We also provide for any possible opponents to ask questions of proponents as well. So we'll start with the staff report.
Thank you. So as mentioned, this is an application to designate 801 West Indiana Avenue as a historic landmark, a local historic landmark. In the preservation ordinance, there is a clause that if an application for a landmark designation is either submitted by or consented to by the property owners, that the Historic Preservation Commission does have the authority to designate. So in another situation, if the property owner did not consent, then this body would have a recommendation to the City Council. But as this is an application submitted by the property owner, and consented to by the property owner, this body would make a final decision on designation. So this is, if you look up on the screen or in your packet, the location map. The house in question is right here on the corner, the southwest corner of Indiana Avenue and Busey Avenue, just a block off of Lincoln there. And it is, the application is very well researched. It's one of our, we've been very lucky. We've had some really fantastic applications for landmark designation. So the house was originally built by James Elmo Smith, or for James Elmo Smith, who was a 3-term mayor of Urbana. He was also a civil engineer. He was a professor at the university, and he was a major local real estate developer. So he actually has developed quite a few houses around town, and actually even 2 subdivisions around town. The house architecturally is, it's an American 4-square, and it has restrained elements from several architectural styles. We'll discuss a little bit later in more depth, but there are Victorian arts and crafts and colonial revival elements in these style. And the application states that the house does have significant value as part of the architectural, artistic, civic, cultural, economic, educational, ethnic, political, or social heritage of the community. that it is associated with an important person in local history, and that it is representative of the distinguishing characteristics of an architectural type inherently valuable for the study of a period, style, craftsmanship, method of construction, or use of indigenous materials, and retains a high degree of integrity. So your task this evening is to determine whether or not the property qualifies for designation as a local landmark under the criteria laid out in our ordinance. And as I just mentioned, the application states that it does qualify meet 3 of the criteria, the first 3. So to discuss the criteria, the first one, that it has significant value as part of the application really states the social heritage of local social heritage. And it has a wonderful discussion of the man who built it, James Elmo Smith, and as well as the other long-term residents and owners of the house. So we did a little research as well. Actually, Robert Myers looked up, he has he belongs to several genealogical websites that he's able to access some documents, and he did find some documents very easily about James Elmo Smith that are included in your packet. And so he is credited with bringing concrete pavement to our streets, and with modern lighting and electrical systems to Urbana, and so had quite an impact on the city when he was mayor, as well as in his real estate development. He would have had quite an impact on the community. His wife was very active in the community, and according to the application, she was very active in the Methodist Episcopal Church of Urbana, as well as being on the Illinois Council on Religious Education, and involved with a number of other social service organizations. Following their occupancy of the house, Fred A. Russell and his wife Myra Parker Russell owned the house, and they owned and lived in the house for 40 years, from 1926 to 1966. Fred Russell was a professor of economics and business at the university here. And his mark really on our community was probably the biggest impact was that he was director of the University of Illinois Athletic Association and was instrumental in the financing of building the Memorial Stadium and in the furnishing of the Illini Union. And his wife, too, was active in the civic life of the community, particularly with education organizations, and that's all very well documented in the application. So that's the first criteria. The second criteria is related, that the house has significant value due to its association with an important person in local history. And again, so that is James Elmo Smith is really the primary person that this house is connected with as he built it. He built the house while he was mayor, and so it is significant in that period. The application does give a biography of him, as well as there's an attached journal article from Engineering Life that also gives or the Engineer in Public Life from the Engineering News Record that gives a biography of his life. And there's a quote there from the News Gazette, November 6, 1952, from the application that says it was during his terms as mayor that Urbana first built its first concrete pavement. An ornamental lighting system was installed, and numerous other civic improvements were carried out. And that was published when he died. So it might be interesting for the Commission to note that at least 4 of Urbana's 10 residential landmarks were homes of former mayors. For example, one that we recently designated is the home of Chester Richards, who was mayor of Urbana from 1917 to 1919. That was designated in 2008. Also, the Boyden House, the Halberstadt House, and the Sutton House. Those owners were all also former mayors. And actually, those are 2 of those are also more recent landmark designations. And then the third criteria is about the architecture of the house. And so here is a picture. This was the front page of the application. I'll bring up just some photos. So here's the house, the front facade. This is facing Indiana, and this facade is facing Busey. And so we can see in it, it's a 2.5-story house, 2 bays wide and 2 deep. So it does have elements of several different architectural styles. So here on the front, the porch, the columns on the porch are solid and monumental, which is craftsman in style. And you can see those here on the side porch as well. Then we have up here the roof dormers, which are that dominant pediment, which you can see better in a photo that I'll show you in a moment, are colonial revival in style. And then we'll need to look at some of the later photos in here to better see. This projecting bay here is quite Victorian in style. So here you can see again that dominant pediment over the roof dormer. So it is a mix of architectural styles. It is very in keeping with the development of the neighborhood of that period in the 1920s. It was built in 1920. And actually, James Elmo Smith also built several houses right next door when he was building this one as well. And then he's also built some subdivisions, kind of 2 whole developments further east a little bit later. And so the other criteria that you can read through in your packet there, none of those actually apply. And so in your packet, so when you make your motion, you should make a reference to the findings. So there are suggested staff findings there. Any other findings that you would want to add, or any of those findings that you would want to change, you should include in your motion. And the options for you this evening are to find that the nomination meets the criteria for designation, in which case the Commission may approve the application and designate the property as a local landmark, or to find that the nomination does not meet the criteria for designation, in which case the application shall be denied. At this point, I'll just mention there was an email that was that I received earlier today from Lori Ratzman, and it was in favor of the designation, and the Commission has a copy, and they're also available on the back table if anyone is interested, and that will become part of the public record. I did receive a few other phone calls and emails. They were just people asking questions about it. They weren't making comments. And so the staff recommendation on this application would be to approve the application and designate 801 West Indiana Avenue as conforming with criteria B in section 12-5C of the Urbana zoning ordinance, and designating the property a local landmark. The property owners, the applicants are here this evening. The property is actually owned by the Bank of Champaign in trust. The trust is held by the applicants, and we did receive written consent by Bank Champaign just to make sure that we were kind of dotting our I's and crossing our T's for the file. So the property owner and the applicant both support it. The applicants are here this evening. And I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Any questions? Up here.
Oh, if I could make one other comment. I did receive an email from Council Member Diane Marlin, and she said that she corrected one thing in the application that it states that James Elmo Smith was the only mayor to have also been a University of Illinois professor. And that came from an article, I believe, that was written relatively early. And in the 1970s, Hiram Paley was a mayor and also a professor at the university. So there has been another one.
Thank you. I had a question. You mentioned Victorian influence. I don't remember seeing that in the application. Was that something from the staff report?
Yes, that was in the staff report. So that's really just this bay here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you showed the
is.
picture because, but it's late Queen Anne influence, but it doesn't show up in the application anyway, so it's right. So it's not an issue
No,
because technically Victorian's not a style.
right, yeah, true.
Any questions of Rebecca? Okay. Would the applicants, I'll get to you eventually, I promise. Would the applicants like to present? And for future reference, it's really annoying, but we need you to state your name and your address
Oh, sure.
for everybody who speaks tonight. And there's also a sheet to sign at some point before you depart
Oh,
from
we
the
didn't do
table.
that. Okay, great. Oh, okay. My name is Louise Cooney,
My name is T.J. Cooney.
and we thank you all for being here tonight, especially on January 2nd. Thank you, and thank you for our friends and neighbors that are here, and our architect, Andrew Fell, is here as well. So since we've never done this before, I prepared a PowerPoint presentation that's probably pretty duplicative, excuse me, of what Rebecca presented. So I'm going to go through some of these slides pretty quickly. Gigi, can you help me get this to... You've already seen this view of the house. I understand from Rebecca that many of you are very thorough and perhaps have already driven past it, so I understand you're familiar with the property. Rebecca's already gone over the criteria, so I will be respectful of your time and not do that again. Here's the timeline again. I think the only thing that wasn't discussed tonight was Professor Morton Wagman, who owned the house for a very long time, nearly 50 years, and we bought the property from their estate. So here's some pictures that weren't in the application, so this is a little bit fun. This is James Elmo Smith and his wife, Frances Smith, and there's her maiden name of McClellan, and we actually have several photos of him. I think we went over most of this. The key point here is that he had 3 very successful terms as mayor, but he also served in a variety of other capacities and certainly served his community well. The last position that he held was working for the University of Illinois again as Assistant Superintendent of Buildings and Civil Engineer. His wife, I was so pleased by this because I expected to do this research and find lots of things about the guys, about Professor Smith and about Professor Russell, but I found just great things about their wives as well. So Mrs. Smith actually attended the Art Institute, which was quite a feat in her day. And when I searched for newspaper articles for the property, I could not possibly have gone through all of them. There were literally hundreds of articles on this property. There were so many meetings held there, and not just in the society column. There were some of those, but there were a lot of meetings of different social groups and community service type of groups that were held there by both of the first ladies that owned the home. Very impressive. Mrs. Smith, as I said in the application, was the superintendent of a local Sunday school, but she also chaired this Illinois Council on Religious Education, and I didn't put a lot of detail in the application about that, but what she was trying to do, and I'm not sure that she was ever completely successful at this or that it lasted, but she was trying to unify the curriculum for religious education across various churches and trying to get religious education teachers to test the students to ensure that they were learning appropriately. So I thought this was kind of a novel approach early on. This is Professor Russell. There was no picture available that I could find on his wife. I thought this was great. My daughter actually, as a student here, and went to the university archives, and this, which is an experience in itself. And she was able to get this out of the archives for us. And I think the first point here is interesting. Professor Russell was very popular. If you go through articles on him in the Daily Illini, there were a lot of articles about how much his students liked his classes, that his classes were very practical, that he wasn't just teaching, I guess they were kind of bemoaning some of the other professors when they were complimenting him. He wasn't just teaching the concepts, he was giving a lot of real-world examples, and people actually commented on liking his homework assignments, and they were recommending him for other students to take his classes, so I thought that was great. And he was director of the U of I Athletic Association, as Rebecca said. He served on that board for some years and then was the director, and he served the maximum number of tenures that he could in that position. And if you look back through the Board of Trustees minutes, and I copied all those and read through them and searched them for his name and the other owners' names. He was really instrumental not only in raising the money for Memorial Stadium, but also in ensuring that it was built, even when there were difficult financial decisions to be made. And then quite a few years later, he didn't help raise the money for the union itself, but the union, the money was secured for the union, and then they realized there was no money to furnish it, so they were going to have a big empty union. And he there were lots of articles about how he trained students to go back to their hometowns over Christmas break and over Easter break. He had whole kits for them to bring home to go door to door to the alumni in their hometowns with their lists of alumni and solicit money from them. So it was really great. And he was the one of the articles said he was the first one to be on U of I's radio station trying to do some coaching of how to do this solicitation in people's hometowns. And so that helped furnish it, but the artwork was very interesting. There were several articles about how well-connected Professor Russell was and how he was able to get people to donate some of their own private art collections for the union. So really some cool stuff there. And I'm an epidemiologist, so I think the last thing was interesting. He was on the board at the local TB sanatorium. And that's the original drawing that was in the archives. It's available online also. And then his wife was also a teacher, like Mrs. Smith. Lots of meetings at 801 West Indiana, easily found if you searched newspaper articles. She was a leader in this organization that I hadn't heard of before called the PEO Sisterhood. This is still an active organization, and it provides college scholarships for women all over the world. Very interesting group. One of the first members and leaders of Illinois PTA, and obviously other groups that she had there too, and a lot of those meetings held at the house. The third owner, the Wagmans, there was not very much information available on them, but speaking to the neighbors, and of course when we purchased the house, we were aware that Professor Wagman was blind, and that lots of people told us nice stories about how he was disabled and was able to be a professor at the university, and how he always had a guide dog. So just in doing a newspaper search for him, I found this. This was in, I can't tell you, 40, 50 newspapers around the country. This was an AP photo when he graduated from Columbia University in 1948 that was published literally all over the country as kind of, a nice picture story. I thought that was great. So that's the only picture I have of him, unfortunately. Rebecca encouraged me to give a little bit of information about what we did to the house and perhaps a couple of pictures, so and then to talk about the integrity. The exterior of the home is basically unchanged. Rebecca already went over a lot of that with you. And the interior is substantially unchanged. The first and second floors have original oak flooring except for the kitchen. The third floor is beautiful Douglas fir flooring, which I'll show you. It has the original Craftsman windows and doors, and we did have all of the windows removed from the house, taken away to Streeter, Illinois, refurbished and reinstalled in the house. So if you happen to walk or drive past the house during the summer, you might have wondered what the heck we were doing to the place, because a lot of the windows were boarded up, but that was the reason for that. The house boasts, in the interior, it looks very clearly Craftsman, in my opinion, and we'll show you some pictures. Big moldings, Craftsman-style doors, but I'll let you be the judge of that when I show you some of the pictures. The fireplace looks that way. lots of original hardware, and I'll show you how our architect and contractor really helped us match hardware pretty closely to the old stuff for a couple of new doors that we put in. So this is presumptive changes because we never were able to discuss anything with the Wagmans, but it was presumed that when they bought the house in 1966, they converted it from radiators to gas forced air and air conditioning. We recently had a couple of things done to the furnace, a couple of repairs and some ductwork and stuff, and they actually found a plate hidden behind a bypass, an old bypass for a humidifier, and it had a 1966 date on it. So we think it's pretty safe to assume that that's when the ductwork was put in the house. The kitchen was modernized. I'll show you a picture of that. It's a typical kind of mid-century modernization, which was now reverted back to what we think would be more air appropriate, and the upstairs bathroom was presumably remodeled at that time also. The powder room on the first floor was either remodeled or perhaps originated at that time. We don't know whether it was there prior to that era. And as was stated in the report, some of the exterior, well, all of the exterior trim of the home was covered in aluminum probably around that time, or perhaps a little bit later. And these were some of the changes. These were from the listing photos of the house. So this is how the kitchen looked before. So as you can see, it's just some maple kind of modernistic mid-century cabinets that are gone now. And then this was the bathroom. So I won't read you all of this. A lot of this was in the report, but we did a pretty extensive restoration of the home. I think the exterior is probably what you're most interested in. We did replace the roof, gutters and downspouts. The roof was very difficult to tell what it was. There were 4 different types of roofing that we found, and it was moss covered, so we did our best. It was an asphalt roof, and we put another asphalt roof on it. Some of the wing walls on either side of the front steps were crumbling, and those were reconstructed. We used as much of the existing bricks as we could and matched, I think, pretty well on that. The front walk was just completely unsafe. It was crumbling. There were some old concrete steps that were not at all safe. So we chose, and our landscape architect chose some things that we thought would look good with the existing house and might have been appropriate for that era. We did put in new custom railings. The existing ones were some sort of just, ready-made kind of Victorian wrought iron type of things. So our architect helped us choose some ones that looked a little bit more craftsman-like. The front porch was restored. It was the surface of it was crumbling. The garage door was not salvageable. We did try. We had originally planned that, and then when we had the windows done, we asked the window guy if he would be willing to restore that, and he said there was no way, and we had one other person out. So we did replace that. We did some tuck pointing, and then a lot of landscaping. The backyard had gotten out of control. The couple that lived there was elderly. These things happen, and the backyard was just completely filled. You could barely walk in the backyard and turn around. It was completely filled with honeysuckle and buckthorn, those kind of invasive species, and a lot of weeds. So we pretty much stripped everything except for the 3 large pines in the front and the spruce in the back, and regraded everything. There were some water problems, and redid it. And we tried to do things that would be use perhaps plants that were appropriate for the era, or a design that was appropriate for the era. I would have tended to go to something that was a little bit more naturalistic looking, but the landscape architect urged us to do something that would be a little bit more formal in the going with the times. And I'm not going to go over all this interior stuff with you in respect for your time here. You saw the plans. I have those up there for you, so let's skip over these slides. I wanted you to see the 1923 Sanborn map. That was the first one available after the home was constructed. So it's up in the upper left-hand corner right here. There's the house. I think it's very interesting, this lot in back, which is a stone house. Many of you probably know that stone house was not constructed at that time. And then, virtually all of Pennsylvania, Vermont, and Delaware were empty lots at that time. So you know the location of the property. I think you already saw that shot, and that one. These are the new limestone steps that we had put in the front, just trying to echo some of the limestone windowsills. So, there's the side porch that you can see pretty well there. It's the garage door that was replaced. I think you saw this shot already. The backyard, grass didn't take perfectly, but other than that, everything else looks good. The front door, we think the storm doors, the front and back storm doors are original. They're and the main doors. They're the same as the house next door, and Mayor Smith built both of those, so it's probably a good guess. This is the entry foyer. There's a built-in bookcase there. That's looking to the house next door. We did, not to talk a lot about furniture, but we did take some pieces and have them custom made, and there's a gentleman at PACA that custom builds furniture, so there were a couple of demolitions of historic properties over the last couple of years in the area, and he bought Quaterstone oak from those houses that were torn down, and he built us some furniture from local stock, which I thought was pretty cool. The home, I think, was probably an expensively built home in its day. This is the front closet, beveled mirrors, beveled glass in a lot of the home. That's the original fireplace. This is a long shot of the living room, like if you're on the side porch. Piano. We did have a choice of a couple pianos, and we chose one from 1921, so we had that rebuilt, so we thought that was fun. These are the windows that we had restored, that were removed and replaced. They look great. The only thing that was new is they had sash cords. There was not one intact sash cord in the entire house. And they've all been replaced with chains now. So hopefully they'll be a little bit more durable. There's the baseboards that I talked about in the report with the capped top on them that sticks out a little bit. That's the dining room with the bay that Rebecca referred to. And then that door that you see off to the side is the side porch. That is the side porch. There's another shot. You're looking at Busey there. The side porch had like an ornamental or decorative cap on it. It appeared to also be on the front porch, but it was gone. It was unsalvageable. But we were able to salvage this, and I really give our contractor Wells & Wells a lot of credit. That a guy spent about 3 days on his knees trying to save this, and we were able to save it and recoat it. So it's pretty cool. Some of the hardware in the house had been was obviously not original. For example, this is the pass-through door from the kitchen to the living room. It had plastic see-through push plates with little daisies on them. So we pulled that off and put some more historically appropriate hardware on there. The kitchen was redone. We wanted modern appliances, but we tried to use materials or at least colors that would have been available at that time. So you can see trying to pull some of the arts and crafts influence. We at least tried to use some yellows and earth tones in the kitchen. The cabinets are solid cherry, and they're in an arts and crafts style. And then we had some custom art tiles made for, which I'm sure, I don't need to tell you, this is very characteristic of the arts and crafts era. So we had those made for both the backsplash there in the kitchen and for the bathroom. Great Lady in Seattle makes those. The kitchen was converted to an eat-in kitchen with a banquette that was a closet and like mudroom area in the back. So just a doorway was removed. Not much change there. These are built-ins. Again, you can see the craftsman style that we tried to use, and we chose the kind of characteristic pyramidal knobs that were available in that, or common in that era. That's the art tile. And then we did subway tile in quite a bit of the house, and in the kitchen we upgraded it and did limestone subway tile. And there's another shot of the cabinets with the detail on them. This is the powder room that was completely changed around, and we used the same limestone subway tile in there, and then art tiles that just fit perfectly under that window. That worked out great. This is the stairway from the first to the second floor. It is an up and over stairway, so you can get back into the kitchen through there. And We got very, very lucky with the floors. It was really a gamble. A lot of them were covered with carpet, or the carpet had just been removed, and they were covered with goo, and we really didn't know how they were going to come out, and they came out incredibly well. They're beautiful. That's another shot of the stairwell. Again, all that had to be hand sanded. We replaced all the light fixtures. They were either like Victorian light fixtures or just economy fixtures. This is the upstairs hall. It was wallpapered, and everything was wallpapered. It's all been removed. It's the master bedroom. That's that bump out. We did convert. There was one bath on the second floor, and we converted it to 2. So there's a master bath now and a hall bath. And you'll note here that we chose as much as possible historically appropriate choices. So the floor tile is a hex tile, and then we put subway tile around the tub surround there. We even found a little border that had like little pyramidal shapes to it, so tried to pull in as much as we could. There's the hex tile, very difficult to lay. And that's the hall bath. This is the front bedroom. This is the only bedroom that has oak trim. Floors were black in this room and cleaned up perfectly. This is another bedroom that had a built-in, and we were able to retain that. You can see the built-in kind of in the left-hand corner there. This is another bedroom that had a very odd configuration of a closet in front of another closet with blocking a window, and we were able to reconfigure that and put a window seat in there. This is a great bedroom that kind of sits a bit over the garage and has windows on 3 sides. And you can see the window seat there. And then this is the stairwell from the 2nd to the 3rd floor. And the stairs are pine, and then the floors are Douglas fir. And then this is the 3rd floor bedroom, and the bath is to the right there. And this board and batten construction was already there when we bought the house. The 3rd floor was already finished. We just put the bath in. Try to do the same thing in the bathroom, use historically appropriate materials. I'm not sure they had copper sinks, but certainly copper was a material that was used, and tried to use the appropriate colors, subway tile, and hex tiles on the floor. And these are those French casements. I don't know how often you run across these. These are very interesting windows. You have to open 3 things to get the window open. So this particular one opens down first, and then the screens open in, and then there's another set of casements that open out. And those were all restored as well. And then here's the great job that the architect and the builder did in terms of matching the knobs. So this was a new door for the bathroom on the 3rd floor on the left, and then that was actually the door from the attic or the 3rd floor foyer into the bedroom. So I think they did a nice match there. Okay. Thank you for listening
you.
to that. Are there any questions?
Questions, anybody? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any one who would like to speak in favor of the application? Professor Tepperly. And again, I'll remind you that you need to state your name and address, please, and sign our list up there too, please.
Yes.
Yes.
My name is Nicholas Temperley, and my wife and I have lived at number 805 West Indiana since 1968, and so we were very interested to hear more details about Mayor Smith, and our house was also built by him. And in the 1970s, an elderly man came to our house, and it turned out to be Mayor Smith's son. And he said he'd been born or anyway raised in the house we were in. And he had some old photographs which showed it when it was being built and so on. That was all quite interesting. My question is, it's never occurred to us to apply to have our house made into a historical landmark, and I'm not quite sure what the significance of it is or why one would do so, and what the advantages are. I wonder if someone could explain that.
Well, I can give you a brief summary, and then do we have a brochure around too that we can give you as well? In a nutshell, you would seek local landmark status for your house in recognition of its significance, but also to have an additional layer of protection for the property, to have safeguards that the architecture of the property, if there are any exterior changes, that would come before the commission, and there would be some oversight and monitoring of the types of changes that could occur to the property.
But that would be, so you really would be restricting your own behavior.
You would.
So what is
And that
the,
of future owners.
What is the advantage in doing this?
Well, we could ask the Coonies, I guess, for the case in hand. But I think some people want to protect it for the future, for the next owners, to ensure continuity, to ensure a property's place in a neighborhood, and to have some kind of a cross-check over potential changes that could occur in the future.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
Another, we do have a couple of small incentives for landmarking properties. One of them is building permit fees are waived. So when you have when you do any work on the house, the permit fee, you would still need to apply for and receive the permit, but the permit fee would be waived for all landmarks. And then there are some other. There is a state property tax freeze for money when you invest a substantial amount in a rehabilitation. You can have a property tax freeze for a number of years. And then for income-producing properties, there is another financial incentive as well.
I see. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor? Yes, please. Oh, okay. That's fine.
I would like to. My name is Hussein Shehitola. I live on 805 West Michigan. So Mr. Temple lives on 805 Indiana. I live on 805 Michigan, West Michigan Avenue. I would like to. I don't have a comment to make except to state that I would like to thank the Coonies for purchasing this property and doing so much research to tell us or to give us an example of the benefits and the extent of the privileges that we have in living in this neighborhood. And I think, echoing what Mr. Temperley said, I think we would all now consider looking at our own houses and going through the same kind of exercise. So I wholeheartedly endorse this application. I thank you for listening to the presentations. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. We look forward to your application for your house. Next.
Hello, I'm Mary Ann Bunyan, and I live at 604 West Pennsylvania. And I did the same thing to our house on Pennsylvania. So when I saw the Coonies working on their house on Indiana, I came and said, introduced myself and told them about this process. So my hope is that this area of Urbana becomes completely historical, and I feel like I'll knock on each and every door and ask everyone, invite them to do this process. And thank you very much. They did a great job.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I'm Susan Frobish, 809 West Delaware. And I also want to speak in support of the historical designation. And also being a local realtor, I've seen the before, and they've done an amazing job, an absolutely beautiful job. And it's kind of inspired me to maybe put a couple of my houses on historic designation. One of them is on the list of 100 interesting houses, and I think that one might be architecturally worthy of this type of designation, but I might need a little help with the application. So, but again, and to say, I'm sorry. I just also want to say thank you to the CUNYs for doing an amazing job. So.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Amy?
My name is Amy Ando. I live at 712 West Michigan, and just very quickly, I'd like to speak in support of this. When we moved, we're right around the corner from this house, and I'd walk past it every morning on the way to taking our kids to school, and you couldn't even see it. It was completely overgrown with trees and vines and stuff, and so to see it restored and to have the history revealed through the research is really exciting, and I think it's great.
Thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Brian?
My name is Brian Adams. I live at 410 West Elm Street in Urbana, and I just think this is a great nomination, and I think it's nice to see one of these things, applications be done for a building that's in good shape and has a lot of integrity. A lot of times we're sort of one step ahead of the wrecking ball, so this is really nice to see that this is being done before it's too late to bring a house like this back. I did catch one inaccuracy in the nomination, and it's not a major thing, but regarding the Sutton House at 502 West Elm, that house was built by the widow of Royal Sutton, who was a mayor. He never actually lived there. It's not a big point, but researching those two properties or that lot was very complicated, so I just wanted to set the record straight. Royal Sutton lived at a house that was situated between 504 and 508, which is now occupied by a modern apartment building, and that house was in fact built by Clark Robinson Griggs, but it burned down in the 80s, and Royal Sutton lived in it after Griggs. But so anyway, it's kind of a picky thing, but I just wanted to set the record straight. But it was probably built from bricks that were created at Royal Sutton's brickyard. But again, it was his widow who actually built that house. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of the application? Does anyone wish to speak against the application? Didn't think so. Anybody have any general questions about the application at all? Okay, I'm closing audience participation then, and commission discussion. I'll start by saying, I told you before the meeting, but this is such an outstanding nomination. And the research and the thoroughness of your research, and it was also a good read. It's a page turner of an application, and in particular, I wanted to thank you for your lovely phrasing in your summary when you said that the house had been continuously occupied by important professors at the University of Illinois and their social activist wives. Thank you, thank you. The wives have been consistently overlooked in the hood, so thank you for stating that, and it's just really exciting. So yeah, I've walked by the house many times on dog walks during the summer, and I worried for the house. I always worry about things in the 800 block in the neighborhood, and then the windows were always going to be my threshold of, I had no idea what was going on to the house, but thank you in particular for restoring those windows. I think you have been an inspiration in both your research and the project for the house, and I hope that other people follow your excellent footsteps. Anybody else? Yes?
I think it was a beautiful, beautiful job in renovating this house. when I was reading this and going through and kind of reviewing the four-square architecture, the one thing that I found is that it was pretty common for builders to borrow from different styles to kind of jazz up those four-square designs, those prairie boxes. And anyway, it's kind of interesting with the bay windows and the pediments, and it's very nice. It's a beautiful house. The inside is beautiful. It's very lovely. Did a very nice job.
Yes?
I just wanted to echo Allison Kim's comments in terms of the quality of the application and the loving effort both in the restoration and in the presentation to our group here. And so as we roll toward, we're thinking about how to move this through, I guess I'd like to just note that currently we have a recommendation from staff for a nomination in criteria B solely. Well, and I guess that's what I want to that's why I don't want to everyone else will say this is a beautiful application too, so I'm just trying to push the ball down the road just a little bit. And I note that we have a current craftsman style home that is a landmark, and I'm wondering why whether we should consider additional criteria for approval when we start to construct our motion.
I think it makes for a stronger case, and I think it's appropriate in this situation. I think if it's appropriate, and fitting to include as many criteria as possible, we should do so and encourage that from applicants as well. The thing with, as we know from trying to narrow down to the 100 most significant lists, we have lots of good examples of lots of styles. And I'm all for being inclusive with regard to what can be considered significant. Other thoughts?
I guess I'd agree with you. When I was reading through this, I was thinking maybe we should consider both all three, A, B, and C. I was actually kind of surprised that the recommendation was only for B.
Oh, I too. Okay. Rebecca, do you want to comment on why only B?
We really just were taking the one that we thought was the primary one and recommending that, and certainly not saying that it did not meet the criteria for the other two, but as it so clearly met the criteria for B, we thought that was its strongest point, and so that was the recommendation. But there was certainly no intention of not including the other two criteria if the commission felt that those were that they met the criteria.
So whomever wants to phrase the motion may also want to consider additional findings then, or a rewording of the findings that accompany that motion, if A, B, and C are all three to be included. Are you typing a motion?
Yeah. I'm starting. I'm drafting one. I was hoping to kill a little time by starting some kind of controversy or something.
All right, I'll do. Did you have a question, Joe?
I do. I was even on D, notable work. He noted civil engineer and land developer.
But notable work is if it's a particular architect.
I see.
Designer.
Got
it's
it.
the designy criteria.
I see.
I don't know, Rebecca, do you have an electronic copy of this, like for little picky changes?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is that all right if we, okay. I had some really minor things. I guess on page 1, it says the architecture is typical of Urbana homes that were owned by leaders in the community. I'd kind of like to see that scratched because I don't think there is anything typical. I'm open to disagreement, certainly, but it's the last paragraph of the, the last sentence of the first paragraph of the summary. And I guess one other thing I was wondering about too is when I first read this, I wasn't clear on the Georgian revival influence. If there could be a sentence added, as you stated in your report, to clarify for us that it's really chiefly the dormer that's either Georgian or colonial revival, the dormers, and that the semi-hexagonal bay on the east elevation is kind of a holdover from Queen Anne influence. How's that motion going?
Yeah, I think I'm about done. I need to get this thing out of the way here. So can I make a motion?
Yes, please.
I want to move that in case number HP 2012-L-01, based on the application and analysis herein, the Historic Preservation Commission finds that the local landmark nomination for 801 West Indiana Avenue be approved as it conforms with criteria A, B, and C in section 12-5.c of the Urbana zoning ordinance. Due to its significant heritage value to the community, history as a residence of noted persons, specifically Mayor J.E. Smith, and its representativeness of a distinguishing architectural style which retains a high degree of integrity. That last sentence isn't a very good one. But is that good enough to start? Suki?
Second? Do we have a second? Second.
Sure.
It's been seconded by Kim Smith. Comments? Phrasing, Rebecca, is that adequate on findings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had one question. What do you think about calling it the Smith-Russell House to acknowledge the other long-term?
I think that's interesting because...
Yeah, please. Thank you. It's really an unusual case that you really
It
had
is.
3 long-term occupants of the house, and the Russells seem to be significant as well.
They were, and actually, when Rebecca first sent me the, is it called the inventory? Because there's an inventory on all the properties that some students had
The
done.
survey.
The survey, sorry. On that, it was called the Russell House.
Oh.
So I'm really not sure what I would completely defer to you on that. I'm not sure what the naming
So you wouldn't
criteria is.
You wouldn't object if we officially designated as the Smith-Russell House?
No,
Okay.
that would be great.
Thank you. Thoughts? Sounds good. Okay.
Do we get a second?
We did from Kim Smith.
Okay, great.
Any
Thanks.
other discussion? If not, I'll call the question. Suki, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Seiler? Mr. Dossett?
Again, with thanks for an excellent packet, yes.
Ms. Novak?
Yes.
Ms. Stoltz?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Paluso?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. It's unanimously approved, and as Rebecca mentioned in the staff report, we are able to designate since you are the applicant and the owner of the property. So it's official. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Can we recognize our architect, Mr. Pell? He's here.
Yes. Hello, architect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you. One thing I didn't mention in my comments is the difference it makes to the entire neighborhood. So to me, it's much beyond the local designation of the house, but you've given a jump start to the whole neighborhood. Thank you for that. Thank you, everybody, for coming as well. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you know, we understand. We're used to the house clearing out for the rest of the meeting. Oh, did you want, you can have these back as well, too.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'll get them.
Can we collect the,
Actually, you know what?
it's okay. Oh, you want to?
I could keep one.
I think they should be archived, yeah, someplace, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
great, okay.
I have PDFs of them, so just.
All right.
Thank you
thanks
so much.
Thank you. Okay, we have no new business. Monitoring historic properties, anything? Yes?
So we discussed 502 and 504 West Elm Street. We had a comment from the public from Brian Adams about 504 West Elm, and not a particularly informative update, but it is I told you at our last meeting that our building safety department would be inspecting both properties in their entirety, and those inspections should be scheduled within the next 2 weeks. It's been a little difficult in the last month with the holidays, but they should be scheduled within the next 2 weeks, and so hopefully at the next meeting I will have more to report.
Great. Thank you. Yes? Do you have, oh, okay. Any other monitoring concerns? Staff report.
I do have something that I have been working on. Back in 2009, the City Council goals included a goal of looking into a historic district for West Elm Street. And it actually, it gave a boundary. It said from, let's see, Cedar to Buena Vista Court. And that was put on the council goals in 2009, and here we are in 2013. We're starting to work on it. So I have been in contact with some of the property owners, and just by looking at the houses, and some of the property owners I actually know, others I know of, but just kind of trying to feel out whether or not there would be support. As I'm sure most of you know, for a historic district application, that has to have support of 25% of the property owners in the prospective district to be considered. So with a landmark, anyone can submit an application, but with a district, it does have to have the support of 25% of the owners. So I've been contacting them, and I think I'm pretty close to 25%. It's not definite support, but it's people who've said that they are interested in pursuing it, that they want to know more. So I have scheduled a meeting in January, late January. I haven't confirmed the date yet, but it's looking like the last week of January, and it would be at the library. And so it's really just to invite all of the property owners and talk to them about why this was included as a council goal, so about the importance of West Elm Street, what it would be as a historic district, what it would mean practically for each of them as property owners in the district. And we would have some speakers. Brian Adams, who is here this evening and is still back there, has agreed to, he's done so much research in this exact neighborhood, and he could really talk to them. He not only owns property in this on this street and in this stretch, but he also has done a lot of research into the neighborhood, and so could talk to people about the importance of this street and its development and so on. And our chair, Alice Novak, has agreed to field any questions that people would have on preservation in general, historic districts specifically. And then also Catherine O'Connor from the Illinois Historic Preservation Agency, who is our certified local government she is the Certified Local Government Manager, I think is the title. She has agreed to come and talk and give examples of historic districts in other communities in the state of Illinois, the benefits of being a historic district. And then I would talk specifically about our ordinance and what it means practically, and then just answer any questions that people have and try and get, probably then give them a form to fill out and mail back to us as, saying whether or not they would support it, and then if we got 25% support, then we could go forward with that application. So we have internally talked about boundaries and would it be possible to extend it further to the west. The council goal said from Cedar, which is the street at the back of the library and the Busey Bank, so from that corner, the west side of the street, to Buena Vista Court. So between there, we already have 3 individual local landmarks and a historic district with 8 properties in it, which certainly helps a lot in getting that 25% support. But so really on the north side of the street, there are a lot of homes with pretty good integrity. The south side, on the Buena Vista end, we have the large parking lot for the First Presbyterian Church, and then we have a condominium building that is new that would not be contributing to a historic district and would be very difficult because it's a condominium building. Those are all individual owners, and that would really throw a wrench in the 25%. It would. I'm not quite sure what that would do to the ownership. It's one parcel, but it's each piece of it is owned by someone else, and so that would be difficult, and it wouldn't contribute to it anyway. And then we have, going further west, we have the back of the church properties, and so that's the daycare. It's called the something cooperative daycare center, I think. And then another parking lot. On the other side of that is a house that the church owns that is a Royer designed house. So it would be really nice to include that. But I think probably it would be very difficult to include those blocks because of the condo building, the parking lots, the back of the church, and we might have much greater success not including those. So going from Cedar to McCullough on the north and the south side of the street, but then the north side of the street from McCullough to Buena Vista. So we can talk about that further if any of you are interested or have any ideas, if you want to go home and take a look at a map. None of this we're all still just having preliminary discussions, and we'll come back and talk to the commission about it at our next meeting as well. But I just wanted to let you know that that was going on. If any of you are interested in attending that meeting, please let me know. And if there would be more than 3 of you, I'm not sure what we would do then, because that we'd have to advertise it, and I think we wanted this to be a meeting just of the neighbors. But let me know if you're interested, and we will work out those details. And I think that's all for the staff report.
I had a question. I missed the last meeting, but I had a question about the grant to do the 100 list.
Mm-hmm.
Then who narrowed it down? Was that something you just, as far as the properties to be featured on the grant project?
On the so for the podcast, the tours, we're working on that now. It was we've just been doing that at the staff level by looking at what properties do we have interesting stories to tell, what properties would be easy to film. So a lot of properties, the landscaping would make it very difficult, or maybe the actual, the location, which way the property faces, and so on. So we created 3 kind of themes, and then looked at properties that fit that, based on really. Most of it was based on the stories that we had to tell, because not all of the properties did we have a lot of the history side of it. And then for the walking tour, that was a geographic-based one, and so that was more kind of, we were just really picking all of the properties that were clustered that could be on a walking podcast tour. But that is... We've unfortunately just lost our intern who was working on that. He's just moved. It was his plan all along, but it's still hard. So he has left us with kind of rough draft scripts, and our cameraman is going to be Jason Liggett of UPTV, who many of you probably know from. He's not usually here in the meetings, but he is sometimes when he. Doesn't usually cover evening meetings, but he is the organizer of the evening meetings. So when the regular person can't make it, he is in here. So you might know him. He's done a lot recently filming and producing, I think would be the term, of short videos for different things connected to the city. And they're very good. I have been really impressed with them. And so he was trying to film earlier in the fall, and it didn't work. And now he's got the time, but we're waiting for the snow to melt. And hope that things don't look too bad. But he'll be he'll be filming them at different times and going back and filming more detail of different things. But so trying to have relatively neutral landscapes. And so I think we wouldn't want really the snow. So we'll be waiting until it melts, hoping that happens pretty soon. But as soon as we have, we're going to internally have a meeting within the next couple of weeks going over what our intern has left us with. And then anyone who's interested, maybe I can bring that to our next meeting, that we would then go through, as long as we don't have a big agenda, because it might take a bit of time, but go through them and get your input.
And then who would do the narration?
That we haven't determined. We did talk for a while about putting out an ad with the film school at the university, and just having students apply, and just having anyone apply who wanted to narrate it. There was a suggestion, I believe, of Scott's that Trent do the narration.
I nominated Trent.
Unfortunately, he's in New Zealand right now. He might be back by the time we're ready to narrate, though.
No, just curious. Okay, great. Thank you. Study session, annual award.
So this was originally Alice's idea, and she wondered if we should have some sort of an award to commemorate Art Zangrel, our former our former commission member, to commemorate his work in preservation to our community. And we discussed it at our previous meeting, and at that time, I explained there were some concerns when we talked about it at a staff level. Would it be duplicating what PACA already does? Are there enough projects that are not connected to anyone that is here on the commission, or the work that the city does in preservation? Because obviously this commission couldn't award itself or an individual member. And so those were some concerns, and then Gina had suggested perhaps we could partner with PACA, and so that we wouldn't be duplicating their work. We also wouldn't then need to have a separate ceremony. It could be we could partner with them to have an award that commemorated art. And I did speak with the chair of their their awards committee, and then I explained what we had talked about here. And they then had a meeting, and let's see, so I just heard back from him a couple of weeks ago, and he said that they liked the idea of creating an award commemorating art. They wondered how it would work, and were open for ideas. So if that was something that the commission wanted to pursue, I think that they would be open to pursuing that as well. Any thoughts?
Well, I'm sorry I wasn't here for the earlier discussion, I guess. I would hope that we don't partner with PACA, that we do something separate to boost preservation in Urbana, and I kind of don't want to muddy the waters, I guess, with you're right, they already do have a well-established awards program, but it's substantially different, I guess, than what I would see us doing. And I kind of was hoping we could do something that would be just a Urbana program. But I could be outnumbered on that. I think that is a good point. We may not give it every year. I think that's just the reality of, and I think that's okay. I mean, I think it should just be out there, and we evaluate possibilities each year and, see if there's something that makes sense. Just knowing that it may not be an annual award.
So would you see it as something, as a program that had strict outlined criteria, or would it be just, it would be an agenda item every whatever month it happened to be, let's say for fun, January, that you would have a discussion and anyone would nominate or make suggestions of projects that they knew of and then just have a general discussion? Or would it be a more formalized program?
Scott?
I'm not a real formal guy, as you might have guessed. In our neighborhood association here, the Historic East Urbana Neighborhood Association, if we see a property that's been just very well maintained or rehabbed during the year, then it's kind of on the agenda toward, I don't know, midsummer or whatever, to talk about that amongst ourselves. We haven't awarded one of those in a while, but we have done 4 or so. So I guess I would rather keep it less formal, because if we want it to be more formal, we have to create the system by which the judging would be done.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't sense a lot of zest to do that. I think it's more of a feeling of who has contributed to the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm afraid if we had a rigid set of criteria, that might actually limit our creativity and our ability to recognize people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I would hope, that there might be some ceremony, or that it might be presented at a meeting here, and maybe May, because that's traditionally Preservation Month, and we haven't really done that much for Preservation Month historically as a commission. So then maybe it would be an agenda item for February, realistically, or March. When does Trent get back? And I think, we should have some, maybe not hard, fast criteria, but suggestions, I guess, for things to consider that we could come up with. And to me, the spirit of volunteerism that he was so instrumental in, hands-on helping to restore the Ricker House. And he would just pitch in. I think he participated in the unveiling and other things as well. So that would be top on my thoughts of what would reflect his contributions.
That sounds good.
Could we put something on the preservation part of the website too, where we could actually, is this something that we just want the commission members to suggest, or could we actually ask for public input? Put something on the website that says, hey, we're looking to put an award out there, and do you have a suggestion or an idea or a particular house or district or, that you'd be interested in, or even maybe in the schools, a flyer that would go out to the schools to get the kids interested too.
Mm-hmm. I think, it can be whatever we want it to be, I think.
Right.
So. Agreed? Yeah.
It's certainly easy enough for us to put something on the website. A little harder to get it to the schools. Not impossible, but not necessarily easy. If we're asking the public for their nominations, I would think that we would want a little more fleshed out idea of what it is you're looking for, right? More than just the volunteerism. So it wouldn't have to be criteria. You have to meet A, B, C, and D, but maybe just a broader description of art, and then what types of projects, or if it's people or whatever it is. But just once you start asking the public for nominations, and so maybe someone nominates something and it's not at all what you were actually thinking of, and so they don't get the award, and then they would be perhaps frustrated that they didn't understand what it was that was being asked.
What do you say?
Well, I was going to ask, Alice if she would mind drafting a couple of short paragraphs, which included, I think, some of the very eloquent things that she just said about art. And Rebecca can wing it around to us, and we can make comments, try to be creative about the spirit and the action that we want. And maybe the next time we have a meeting, we'll have something in front of us that we can come to a conclusion about, vote in, and then start working on. I mean, I get all kinds of mail from the city of Urbana. I mean, I'm on plan commission lists and this one. So, I mean, I think we can get the word out to a lot. You know, the neighborhood associations all have distribution channels. And so I think we can probably get this out to, you know, several hundred people in town that may have interests along these lines, and some of whom may have known Art or saw him work in the commission, to get some good feedback from it. So will you do that, Alice?
Yep. Yeah, we'll do it.
Thank you.
I think that's a good idea, that if we do a couple of paragraphs on art, and then I think we can still leave it open-ended. Just, you know, a preservation project or a person, and why you think they should be awarded.
Would there be any conflicts with, let's say, for example, our project this evening, that now it's a local landmark, but they clearly did a lot for preservation in Urbana in this year, but because it's now a local landmark, is that, would that be problematic? What if that was nominated? Do we need to outline things like that? Do you see that as being a conflict of interest if it's been designated?
I don't.
No?
Yeah.
So I suppose as it's honorary, it doesn't
Right.
need to be as, you know, it's not like we're giving out money.
Gina, since you brought up the PACA idea, are you okay with not partnering?
Yeah, I just put it out as a suggestion because we were all just kind of sitting here like, I don't know. So I thought, you know,
Okay.
since they already have an award ceremony, it kind of was like, well, maybe we can just, you know, but that's fine. It's perfectly fine with me that we do something on our own.
Okay. All right, so we'll just bring it back next time with some draft thoughts. Okay, thanks. Any announcements? No?
Motion to adjourn?
Seconded by Joan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you.